The pictures are always blurry, but they keep showing the same hairy, tall creature stalking the woods all around North America and the world. Follow me down the rabbit hole about Bigfoot. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the rabbit hole. I'm your host, Danny, and today we are talking about Bigfoot. So, I really needed a break from the demonic episodes that I've been doing lately. I feel like they've all kind of led that direction, and I've been having nightmares. So, I needed something that was like calm, cool, easy to kind of just take the edge off a little bit because sometimes conspiracies can take a toll on you, especially when you live in like this dark world of like researching all these crazy conspiracies all the time. Sometimes it's nice to just take a chill. So, we're talking about Bigfoot. Thank you, Hunter and Danny, Christine, Silas, Randy, and Carter, for requesting this episode. I'm excited to get into it. It might be a little bit shorter just because I don't know where they come from. I don't know why they're here. I don't understand much about the why of Bigfoot. I guess you could say the same thing about humans. Like, why are we here? But not the point. Not trying to get all weird on you today. We're just trying to learn the history. So let's go. Most known as Bigfoot or Sasquatch, this large, hairy, mythical creature has roots in cultures all around the world. This creature is a cryptid or a species rumored to exist, like the Chupacabra or the Loch Ness Monster, the Yeti, the Abominable Snowman, the Jersey Devil, all these things. It's usually described about 6 to 9 feet tall, although some depictions have it as tall as like 10 to 15 feet. This is a bipedal human or ape-like creature covered in black, dark brown, or dark reddish hair. It's described as an ape due to the length of its arms. So the intermembral or IM index is a measure used to compare the length of an animal's forelimbs to its hind limbs. For humans, the IM index is about 68 to 70. This means that our arms are about 70% as long as our legs. For gibbons, which are a member of the ape family, they have an IM index of around 140 to 147. But apes typically, you're going to have longer arms in comparison to the rest of your body. But the face of Bigfoot also seems to be very ape-like. Some people have described this creature as having yellow or red eyes that glow. However, a glowing eye, which we see in like cats or owls, is not present in humans nor any other known great apes. So it doesn't make sense for it to look like an ape but then also have glowing eyes, or to stand up like a human and walk like a human and then have glowing eyes. Like those things just don't make a lot of sense. But the smell of this creature is said to be horrendous. One person described it, stating, quote, "Imagine a skunk that had rolled around in dead animals and had hung around the garbage pits," end quote. So, like, you know that you're smelling a Bigfoot. It got the name Bigfoot because the enormous footprints left behind from this creature, as long as 24 inches and as wide as about 8 inches. Some prints have included claw marks, not every print. A lot of people think the claw marks are actually bear prints. Although a lot of people think that Bigfoot is actually just bears walking on their hind legs, which doesn't make sense with like the arm ratio as like a Bigfoot versus a bear. Bear's arms aren't as long as what a Sasquatch or Bigfoot arm would be. This creature is said to possess superhuman abilities like super speed and strength, but also I'm wondering if like the super speed and the super strength are just from the massive size of this creature. Like your legs are so long, you're gonna be faster than a human, or you're much bigger and you're basically pure muscle because everyone says like you can see the muscles moving underneath the creature, like underneath the fur. They're gonna have more strength than just a human. So maybe it's just the pure size. It seems like most cultures have accounts of human-like giants in their folk history. The Ute, Arapaho, and Cheyenne, along with so many other native tribes, have legends of big hairy creatures. And with that, these creatures have been given a lot of different names. But in North America, most of the sightings happen in Alaska and Washington State. Actually, Washington State is the number one place for sightings in the US, but British Columbia and Yukon in Canada are also very, very popular. There are a decent amount of sightings in Oregon, Idaho, Montana, as well as California, Colorado, Texas, and Alabama. In Canada, there have been sightings in Manitoba and Alberta. So it's not just like one place. They're kind of just all over the place. There's also these legends in Australia, in the UK, like in England. There's legends of these same type creatures all over the world. I focused here in North America just because that's where I'm based out of. I know I have a lot of listeners out of the UK. Hi guys, oh, and Australia. So hi guys. I didn't really bring up your creatures, but they probably are very similar to our creatures. The legend of Sasquatch came from what is commonly associated as the mispronunciation of Saskets. This word is used to describe a supernatural wild man, meaning hairy man, and is from the Coast Salish people who live along the Pacific Northwest coast from North California to British Columbia. This creature, who had been known to the indigenous people for generations, first appeared in newspapers in 1884 when a half man, half beast creature was said to be captured in British Columbia. They said they found the creature unconscious on railroad tracks, but when it woke up, a group of guys chased it and knocked it out by dropping a rock on its head, which to me sounded very much like a cartoon. Like you have all these people like running around and somebody's on a cliff and there's an X on the ground and they knock it. It sounds silly, but that's that's what the newspaper suggested happened. In July 1924, the Oregonian made national news when a story was published describing an incident between a group of gold prospectors and a group of ape men. This happened in a gorge near Mount St. Helens, and that area is still known as Ape Canyon. So one of the men was said to have shot one of the creatures, and then later that night, the creatures came back and threw large rocks at the cabin where the gold prospectors were staying. The next morning, they woke up and they're like, "We got to get out of here. There's something weird going on here. There's these ape creatures, and we got to go." What's different about this story, though, is that it's the only story that I found that reported multiple ape men, whereas all the other stories just had one Bigfoot, one Sasquatch. This one had like a group of them. The modern legend of Bigfoot began in Northern California in 1958. This is the story that you'll hear from everybody when you learn about Bigfoot. So there's an article in the Humboldt Times that shared how loggers discovered mysteriously large footprints, prints too large for a human to make, and too human to be an animal. So of course this led to the loggers naming this creature Bigfoot, but also like reporting like, hey, there's these really big feet in the dirt up here where they were logging. They never actually saw the creature though. They just saw the footprints. Later, when Ray Wallace died, he did confirm that he was playing a prank and that these feet prints were just made up. However, 9 years after the hoax, the Patterson-Gimlin video came out. This video, taken in 1967, was a Bigfoot-looking creature, and it's just like walking casually. Then it looks back on the filmmakers Roger Patterson and Robert Gimlin, and then continues on its way. The video was taken alongside Bluff Creek in the Six Rivers National Forest. This is the exact same place where the loggers found the footprints in 1958. It's still considered some of the best footage of Bigfoot to this day because it's not very shaky. I mean, at the beginning of the video, it's really shaky, but then they get it really situated, and you just watch Bigfoot walk along, and then he looks back, and then he just keeps on going. The most popular picture of Bigfoot comes from this video. It's frame 352, and this is the point when the creature is looking back toward the camera with his arms swinging. Basically, anytime you look up a picture of Bigfoot, this is the picture that you'll see. Well, before then, Native Americans had painted rocks along the Tule River that showed a group of Bigfoot-like creatures called the family. The local tribes people would call the largest member of the family Hairy Man. In the 16th century, Spanish explorers and Mexican settlers told tales of the Dark Watchers. These were large creatures that would stalk their camps at night and had glowing eyes. They assumed that they were hairy, but they couldn't really tell because it was nighttime, but they were very tall, like a Bigfoot is said to be. Around that same time in the 16th century, a Jesuit priest was living with a tribe in the region that is now Mississippi and reported of hairy creatures in the forest. So these creatures were known to scream really loudly and steal livestock. But Bigfoot is usually just written off as a bear or as fake. But if it isn't real, then how come so many people have seen them and also reported on them? For example, the podcast Sasquatch Chronicles has 1,169 episodes, mostly of people's encounters or sightings of Bigfoot. And that's not the only podcast. Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio is another one. But there are like 25 Bigfoot podcasts when I searched. I looked on like Apple Podcasts, I searched in Bigfoot, and 25 podcasts dedicated to Bigfoot came up. That does not include my podcast where I'm talking about Bigfoot or other conspiracy theory podcasts that have talked about Bigfoot in the past. I mean, Joe Rogan's talked about them. The Swerve podcast did a really good episode. There's just all these different podcasts that have done Sasquatch Bigfoot episodes outside of the Sasquatch Chronicles or Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio that are just focused on Bigfoot sightings and Bigfoot experiences. I mean, there have been more than 10,000 eyewitness accounts of Bigfoot in the continental US in the last 50 years, as reported in 2019. So, more in the last 5 years, I'm sure. Just recently, a photo of Bigfoot was being circulated on the internet that was said to have been taken in the mountains of Colorado. The picture was clearer than prior images or videos, but it turns out this picture, which originally didn't have a date besides the date that it was posted, was from 2012. Posted by Squatch Watch 1, the post says, quote, in 2012, two couples were hiking up a small mountain clearing in Colorado, a regular escape for them. As they made their way up the trail, they suddenly heard heavy footsteps approaching from above. The sound was strange, accompanied by an eerie mix of low gibberish and occasional whispering, as if whatever was coming down was talking to itself. Then, without hesitation, a massive hair-covered figure walked past them, brushing shoulders with one of the hikers. The stench was overwhelming, like a mix of wet dog and decay. It didn't react to their presence, moving as if it had no concern about being seen. Matt, one of the hikers, caught a clear look at its face, chimp-like, scarred across the forehead, and one ear missing. Though not as tall as some legends claim, it stood an imposing 6 foot 4 inches tall, its dark eyes locked with the group in a silent standoff, neither side knowing who would move first. The tension was suffocating till Tiff, one of the girls, finally lost control and let out a piercing scream. In an almost dismissive action, the creature simply turned away, continuing its descent as if nothing had happened. As it walked, its strange muttering resumed, a mix of gibberish sounds and occasional whistles, fading into the trees. The group stood frozen, trying to process what they had just witnessed, their peaceful hike forever altered by an encounter they would never forget. But the picture associated with this post was so clear. One of the, like I said, one of the clearest pictures out there. And we get a lot of slack for that a lot. Like I've never taken a picture of Bigfoot, but on the internet, there's a lot of naysayers basically saying that Bigfoot can't exist because every single picture taken is blurry. And they say the same thing about like alien pictures or like UFO pictures, that they're blurry. So how can they exist, especially in a world with cameras that are so clear all the time? But I think that what we're missing is that, firstly, for like a UFO or potentially a Bigfoot, it's far away. So you're trying to zoom in. Then your picture's not going to be as clear. It's very blurry. Or like you're freaking out. If I'm seeing a Bigfoot, I'm freaking out. I'm going to be shaking. Like I'm not going to be like standing really still and taking a really good picture. I'm going to be like whatever I can get on this phone is going to be the best I can do because I'm losing my mind. I might get mauled by Bigfoot today. So I think that the blurriness can be explained away. I don't think that's like a cut and dry, like Bigfoot doesn't exist argument. In 2023, a video was taken of Bigfoot, although the quality isn't as good, and it showed basically the same thing as the previous story. So this guy was walking in the mountains when he heard a commotion in the bush. The silhouette of the creature looks similar to the others of Bigfoot. The size of this creature is what most people fixate on, even though the quality isn't great. Like they see how large this creature is, and they're like, well, he's the size of Bigfoot, but it's so grainy. It must be like at dusk where the sun's kind of going down. You really can't see much of what's happening. But this video was from 2023, so more recently. But in both stories, Sasquatch doesn't seem to mind the people. Like, he isn't scared of them, he's not hiding from them, he doesn't really care. He's just like, whatever. He just keeps going about his regular life. Like, nothing matters. So, he's obviously not scared of us. Some people claim to have heard Bigfoot shrieks, howls, growls, screams, or other vocalizations. I mean, the story from 2012 heard gibberish and whistling, but Bigfoot is associated with other noises as well, such as like wood knocking. These noises have been heard and recorded, yet experts can't always identify the exact animal making the noise. There are some sounds that people thought were Bigfoot, but it turned out just to be like a fox or a coyote or whatever. But not every recording is identified as a known animal. So that gives a little bit more credibility. Like, okay, well, you don't know what animal is making this noise. You know what animal we don't know the noise of? A Bigfoot, a Sasquatch. We don't know what kind of noise they make. So if we can't identify it here, what's to say that this isn't the sound of a Bigfoot? In 2019, a recording of one of those sounds was circulated on the internet from a forest in northwest Ontario, Canada. Cryptozoologists, or people who search for creatures rumored to exist, point to the fact that the noises can't be identified as more evidence that Bigfoot does actually exist. There has been hair turned into scientists to study, though they rarely ever study it, but sometimes they do. So in 2014, a team of researchers from the University of Oxford in England conducted genetic analysis on 36 hair samples claimed to belong to Bigfoot or the Yeti, which is basically like Bigfoot but lives in the Himalayas. Most of the hairs were that of a cow or a raccoon, a deer, or human hair, but two of the hairs closely matched an extinct Paleolithic polar bear. Although said to have come from a bear and not a primate, this is evidence that can't just be written off. Like, this bear that this hair most closely resembles, it's not an exact match. It's a close match to this extinct bear. Where would that hair have come from? Maybe the Sasquatch is more bear than it is ape or human. That's not completely unheard of. And in Washington state, where the most Bigfoot sightings occur, there are actually laws against hunting and killing Bigfoot. In 1969, when the law was first put into place, just 2 years after the Patterson-Gimlin film was recorded, it was classified as a felony. So if you killed or you hunted a Bigfoot, you're getting a felony. The penalty included a fine up to $10,000 and/or up to 5 years in jail. In 1984, this law was amended, reducing the penalties to a gross misdemeanor or just a regular misdemeanor with fines and jail time accordingly. Additionally, Whatcom County, which is the county that borders Canada and the Pacific Ocean, has a resolution that designates the area as a Sasquatch protection and refuge area. So that's where Sasquatch can go to live in peace, is up in Whatcom County. But if there are laws against hunting Bigfoot, does that mean he's real? Like, why would the state, unless they're just being cheeky, like funny, but you're going to put in like an actual fine, a $10,000 fine, and up to 5 years in jail. And by the way, $10,000 in 1969 is almost $90,000 here. It's like 87 and some change, $87,500, right? So that's a huge, drastic jump. And 5 years in jail for hunting Bigfoot. That doesn't exist. So you're just being funny? You're just like putting random laws into act? Like, that doesn't make any sense. There are laws in other states as well that are not as intense as Washington. Texas is basically like the opposite of Washington. So Texas Parks and Wildlife Department says if Bigfoot is real and is not human, it would be considered a non-protected wild animal, which makes it legal to hunt. So if you want to hunt Bigfoot in Texas, go right ahead. They don't believe that it's real. I have only found one like really solid theory as to what Bigfoot is doing out there. Most people just believe that Bigfoot is a wild animal thing, like living in the woods. However, if there are sightings all over North America, then it's safe to say there are more than just like one Bigfoot. You're not just seeing Bigfoot in Washington in the same park. Like there's sightings everywhere. So that tells me that Bigfoot is a species that lives in multiple places. This theory includes that the creature is a relic population of the extinct Southeast Asian ape species Gigantopithecus blacki. These apes would have followed the many other species of animals that migrated across the Bering Land Bridge to the Americas. But to this day, no Gigantopithecus fossils have been found in the Americas. But that doesn't mean that that's not fully true. I mean, maybe the bones just dissolved into dust. They could just be an animal living out in the wild that is near extinction. That's why we don't see them as much. But the theory that I heard is from the authors of Who They Are and What They're Up to, Stephen and Leslie Shaw, who I actually had on the podcast back in February of 2024. They say that Sasquatches are the sentries protecting the entrances to alien underground bases. Their idea is that, and what their book is about, is that aliens actually live under the surface of the earth, not in outer space. And so they come up from underground, which is also why they're all gray, and they do whatever they do, and then they go back into the entrances, which are like caves or different entrances in national forest lands or in just different forested areas, natural areas. That Bigfoot, wherever they're seen, is because they are actually stopping humans from going too close to the entrances of these alien bases. That's how aliens come in and out. Bigfoot's there to make sure you don't get too close. And I mean, if that's true, it's working because you see a Bigfoot, you're like, yeah, I'm out. I'm going. And that also makes sense as to why Bigfoot isn't really concerned about like humans being around because Bigfoot doesn't care about humans. He's trying to scare humans away to make sure that you don't get too close. But they're bigger than us and they're stronger than us, which means that they don't need a weapon because they could easily get us away from the entrance of this underground base if they needed to. The FBI has had a file on Bigfoot since 1976. That year, the director of the Bigfoot Information Center and Exhibition, Peter Byrne, sent the FBI hairs that he couldn't identify and asked if they would analyze them. Of course, the FBI concluded that the hair was not that of Bigfoot, but instead deer hair. And apparently, they sent that information back to Peter, but up till his like deathbed, he did not know that the FBI decided that it was deer hair. What I find funny is according to history.com, the article that I read on this, it states, to be clear, this is not evidence that the FBI endorsed the existence of Bigfoot. All it means is that the FBI did a favor to a Bigfoot researcher. But like, when was the last time the government did a favor for anyone? Unless they get something in return. Like you're getting something. It's with the government, with the FBI, the CIA, whatever, it's always a quid pro quo. They're never just like in it for like, oh, funsies. So if the FBI was looking into it, I mean, their file is now declassified as of 2019, but if they're looking into it, there might be something there. But that's all I have for you guys this week. Something kind of light and fun. I mean, it's Bigfoot, so he might be killing livestock, but it's not the devil at work, hopefully. Until next week, my friends, stay skeptical, and I will see you all then.